the same way they've been playing. They don't have to change anything up. The Ducks are now the ones who have to switch gears and try and push the play against the Sharks. And we don't know. Joe Thornton could be coming back. I doubt they rush him back if they have to, especially being up 2-0. But if he finds his way back in this lineup, that's
That spells trouble, man.
That's a whole other animal the Ducks have to deal with. They can't deal with the offense that the Sharks have currently, and then you add Joe Thornton to the mix. That's just. We could realistically see a line of Joe Thornton, Pavelski, and Evander Kane that now Kessler has to task with shutting down, which adding Joe Thornton is a huge upgrade over Jonas Donskoy, and that's not anything to discredit Donskoy, but that would just be a whole nother level for them to compete with, especially on the power play if the discipline doesn't change. So they got to win these games now before he gets back in the lineup, because once he does, that's exponentially harder for them to win this series.
I agree. Let's hit our question on Reddit.
Yeah. We actually hit an hour. So our last question then on Reddit, a little bit of a long one, but we'll go through it. I'll probably break it up into some parts here. So, Lonely Donut on Reddit said, would love to hear you guys' take on our current offensive system. Are we too slow? Do we need another coaching change? Do we dismantle the shutdown line? Kessler is very slow and looks like a beer leaguer. And who would you guys trade over the summer? So a lot of questions here. So we'll tackle the first one. Are the Ducks too slow?
No, I don't think the Ducks are too slow. I feel like we talked about it a little bit on the show, funny enough, but I feel like their system is just very predictable. It's not a lot of free-flowing hockey. It's not what you see with other teams. As we talked about Dmitry Filipovich, he made a comment about the way Vegas plays. Vegas is very free-flowing hockey. They're able to kind of make and create as they please, whereas the Ducks just seem like it's very systematic. Coming across the blue line, cut back at the half wall, look to the point, get to the front of the net. Over and over and over and over and over again. And it's just not working right now. So that's how I kind of feel with the Ducks offense. I don't think it's too slow, though. They got some quick guys on this team. J.T. Brown, Ricard Raquel, Jakob Silverberg, Brandon Montour's fast. When Cam Fowler's in the lineup, he's quick. And Getzlaf's not fast, but he can move and dominate the play when he needs to. Yeah. So I don't think it's a player or personnel problem when it comes to team speed.
No, I feel like this could be a team that could keep the pace with anybody in the league if they were set up to do that. Ricard Raquel's a quick player, and then you've got Cogliano, who
I didn't even mention Kasha.
Yeah, and you've got Silverberg, who's a fast player. I feel like the only two guys you can pencil in is not being that fast, and then also not being like a Getzlaf type player who doesn't matter if he's fast or not, is Kessler and Perry. But then you've got Henrique, who's no slouch when it comes to speed. You've got Andre Kasha, and then the fourth line, as it's constituted, isn't necessarily that fast. But J.T. Brown, possibly Troy Terry next year, a bunch of different guys that could come up from San Diego or make the team out of the CHL. This team can be a fast team. It's just the system, I feel like, that's dropping them. And I forgot to mention Nick Ritchie is a guy who's probably penciled in as not being that fast. But you got three guys who are slow. And then you look at the blue line. You've got when Cam Fowler's in the lineup with Brandon Montour. That's a speedy second pair right there. Lindholm can move at times. Manson, he's not known for his speed, but he's definitely not necessarily like a boat anchor like Bieksa and Boschman are out there. So
no,
this team could be a faster team, and I feel like they could compete well with a team like Vegas if they were set up to play that way. And this leads into a second question, which we've already kind of touched on, but he said, do we need another coaching change? And I think yes. This team's transitioning now out of being a contender, out of being able to play that heavy style and dominate, to a team that's getting exposed for still playing like that. And they could be a completely different team if they were set up to play that way. I feel like they have the assets to play a completely different style that would work well for them and would work well in the way hockey's being played today by successful teams. You look at, Winnipeg's a heavy team, but they don't play like it necessarily. They throw the body a lot, but they're still a quick team in the way they play. And I feel like the Ducks could play a similar type of hockey to what the Jets do if they were set up to play that way.
I agree. You got a guy like Big Buff just leveling guys like Mikko Koivu behind the net as he did the other night, which was insane. But then you also have guys like Nikolai Ehlers, you have Scheifele, you have Blake Wheeler. And Wheeler and Scheifele are not small guys, but they can skate. That team can really move.
They're big guys, but they use that to their advantage in the way they skate. And they're not Connor McDavid fast, but they're not slow. And I just feel like the Ducks, and again, I've already mentioned this, but I feel like they have the personnel to be a quicker team. they're just set up to still play that rough and tough, big body style of hockey that just doesn't really work.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It works if you have the speed, like the speed strategy to go with it. They just don't. They like to play along the boards a lot. Mm-hmm. So what else did he say in this question?
He says, do we dismantle the shutdown line, and quoting that Kessler is very slow and looks like a beer leaguer. So.
Oh my God, I think that's harsh.
Yeah,
I think he's doing his job. He's also recovering from massive hip surgery. I get the criticism. Look, I understand he's not putting up goals like he has been in previous seasons, but I'm going to throw the guy a bone this year and see what he looks like coming out of summer and into training camp and beginning of next year. Just because this injury was horrific for him. The amount of treatment he's had to endure. I mean, I wouldn't even want to be around that at all. I mean, doing acupuncture with 6-inch needles and learning how to skate and walk again with his hip. I don't know. I don't think he's a beer leaguer. I think he's a guy working through a massive amount of pain and doing his best. And honestly, I think he's playing some of his best hockey minus his interference penalties in Game 1.
Yeah, and I feel like it's harsh, like you said, to call him a beer leaguer because he's dealing with that injury still. He's still rehabbing from that. He has nowhere near the speed that he had last year, and that's not saying he was a quick guy, but he's not necessarily slow before his hip surgery. And now it's just tough for him to get up to that top speed and really match the speed of some of the guys he's going up against. He's going up against a fast line in Donskoy, Pavelski, and Evander Kane, and he's still doing a pretty good job of shutting them down. So you have to give him some credit there. I don't think they dismantle it. I don't really know what's the benefit of taking it apart right now. They're doing their job defensively. Offense has always been a struggle for them at times, and they really shouldn't. The offense shouldn't fall on their shoulders. It should be on the top line, and then secondary scoring should really come from the third line, from Henry, Kasha, and Ritchie, who's supposed to be that second punch of offense. And both lines haven't really been providing that at all in the playoffs, and at times you kind of see them disappearing during the regular season as well. So we'll answer his last part of his question here. He said, "Who would you guys trade this summer?"
Shoot, that's a good one. I would say Nick Ritchie to get something while he's valuable. I don't see, but we've said before, we don't see Bob Murray doing that. Just because you don't really move a first round pick, and it just, unless he's completely disappointing, and he's just not where everyone wants him to be for a first round pick, right?
Yeah.
But if you were to pick somebody else to move, I mean, if you really want to bring in a scorer, you're going to have to move a defenseman. Just what you're going to have to do. But this top nine is pretty set in. And so maybe you have to move a forward as well. And I kind of want to ask you that, Eddie. We've talked it over plenty of times, and we felt like this top nine is not really going to budge until the kids and Sam Steele and Max Jones are like really primed and ready to come up to the NHL. We talked about moving a defenseman, but if you really had to move somebody off the top nine besides Nick Ritchie, who would it be?
If I had to move somebody out of the top nine besides Nick Ritchie, it's so tough because the question he already asked us is, do you break up the shutdown line? I don't think you can at this point. If all bets are off and you can dismantle any line and move anybody out, I feel like the only guy you can really take out of that top nine, I guess, is Andrew Cogliano. I feel like he's the only guy you could maybe put down on a fourth line. I don't think he belongs there by any means, but I don't see how you could take Getzlaf, Raquel, Perry, and take them out of the top nine. I don't see how you could take Kessler, Silfverberg, or Henrique or Kasha the way they've been playing, and Cogliano's been playing well. And I feel like if you had to pick somebody, he'd be the guy I could pick, because he'd be a good energy fourth liner guy. But I feel like he definitely can play above that. But if I had to pick somebody, if I was forced to pick somebody other than Nick Ritchie, I feel like he's the guy that would drop out of the top nine if you had somebody else to plug in there.
What about shipping somebody out? If you had to ship somebody off this Ducks lineup in a trade, and you can't pick Nick Ritchie, and you can't move a defenseman, if you're moving a forward not named Nick Ritchie, who do you move?
You know you're not going to be able to move Perry or Getzlaf. Not saying I would move them. Obviously, you're not going to move Raquel. Kessler, you just won't be able to move that contract.
So you got to move Kasha or Silver.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you pretty much have to move one of those two, and it would be in a package deal to bring in somebody else who can benefit this team. At this point, I would rather keep Andre Kasha because I feel like there's still some upside there. For Silfverberg, I mean, we've talked about him possibly being a 30-goal scorer for so long that it's kind of getting old now. And he's a good player. I'm not going to say he's not a good player. He's a third line, fringe, second line guy, in my opinion. But if I had to move anybody in a trade, it would be obviously to get somebody like Match Patrick or somebody better. Then I would move out Silfverberg in a package deal. I feel like that's the only other option. I wouldn't really want to move Andre Kasha out of the lineup at this point because I feel like he's just kind of scratching the surface of the type of player he can become.
So, I mean, as we just spoke out right here about who we would move, hopefully Ducks fans who have any kind of knock on Bob Murray and his inability to bring somebody in, you got to understand the moves that he was kind of forced to make. When you have star players, no move clauses are a big, big deal. And Kessler got one, and Getzlaf got one, and Corey Perry got one. You're not going to move Raquel because he's your prime scoring guy. You hope he is able to step up again next year and get up to 40 goals. So, yeah, it's hard to rearrange this team when you have three of your core veterans making a ton of cash and you're not able to move them. So it's tough. That's a real tough question going into summer, what they're going to do. I don't really feel like they're going to make any major moves this summer other than maybe bring in somebody for a defensive prospect to put in their forward group. But like we said, but where? Where are they going to do it?
I still don't see a guy like Max Jones or Sam Steele or Maxime Comtois or even Troy Terry, honestly, being able to crack this top line unless they make a trade. And there's no point in wasting these guys' talents on playing 8 minutes a night for the Ducks on the fourth line. I don't think... I mean, you could start the season if you really wanted to with the fourth line of Sam Steele, Max Jones, and Troy Terry. If you wanted to, because both Steele and Jones will be up with the goals or in Anaheim next year. But honestly, what's the point? I mean, you might as well play them 16, 17, 18 minutes a night down in San Diego than playing 8 minutes a night on the fourth line in the NHL with the Ducks. There's really no point to that. I feel like the Ducks can go out and get some better fourth liners, some guys that fit the way a fourth line should play in the National Hockey League. I feel like JT Brown's still a good guy that could be a part of that, and then just maybe adding to that, Derek Grant's a guy that we still think should be here. If you can just get another left winger to play with them, better than Chimera or Chris Kelly or anybody they have currently in the lineup. I feel like even going down the goals and maybe putting Nick Cordelis or somebody like that up with Derek Grant and JT Brown, and that's the lineup for next year. And then you've got the possibility, if they're doing well, and there's injuries or guys aren't playing well, to call up Max Jones, to call up Sam Steele, to call up Troy Terry from San Diego next year and see what they could do. But that team's going to be fun to watch in San Diego next year. Being able to see all those three guys possibly playing on the same line, because Terry's the right wing, Jones is the left wing, Steele's the center. Even if they're not on the same line, just seeing them all down there in San Diego is going to be fun to watch. But I don't see them starting with the Ducks. And unless a trade is made, this is pretty much the lineup we're going to be getting at the start of next year. I don't see any big free agent signings, again, because I don't know where they're going to fit. Maybe you bring in some bottom pairing guys on defense to fill in for Boschman, who's obviously leaving. BX is probably going to BX we think will probably be re-signed for a 1 year, $1 million deal. But even if he's not, you've still got Larson, Pedersen, Walensky, Jacob Magna, all these guys back in the blue line that you would hope can take a step forward. But I think if they sign anybody in free agency, in my opinion, it only really would be for the bottom pairing defense. Yeah,
and unless Bob Murray decides to make some sort of crazy shake-up trade, that forward group's going to sit still.
Yeah.
We got any more questions in our chat? Are we putting a bow on this one tonight and praying for better results on Monday?
Yeah, I think we can put a bow on it. I mean, we're still somehow over an hour 15. We always find a way to get there, and thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat. I know it's a disappointing loss again, and we still had a lot of you in the chat on the last game, and for everybody who came out, I can't name everybody, but looking at the recent one, Connor, Chase, Drew, Derek, Gordon Bombay made it in here a bit. We had some people earlier as well who came in. Quacking Steve was in here for a bit. So thanks everybody who came out to the chat. Anybody who's listening and isn't in the chat as well, thanks for coming out and listening. Hopefully the Ducks can come out and get a win on Monday. We'll be back around the same time again on Monday, about 20 to 25 minutes after the game, and hopefully it's a win. I mean, it would be nice to talk about a playoff win. That would be nice to throw into the memory bank for the for the first inaugural season of our post-game show is to have a win in a playoff game to talk about.
Yeah, that's what we want to have. So we look forward to that game on Monday night.